Today, no surprise, our reading is a Palm Sunday reading. And it's Luke's version of what happened on Palm Sunday. So it's a familiar story to many of us. But what I love about Luke's account is it's full of contrasts. And you really notice them. So, for example, it begins with the joy of the disciples and it ends with Jesus weeping. It begins with the enthusiasm of the pilgrims, and then there's the sort of cynicism and the distaste of the Pharisees. And it begins with a prophecy being fulfilled. There's two prophecies. One is fulfilled and one is made. And the one that's fulfilled results in great celebrations, but the one that is made it's a prophecy of warning. So there's lots going on. And it raises a number of issues like what is prophecy, what is truth, what is peace, and how do we respond? How do we respond to peace when it's offered? So Trevor's going to read the lesson for us. It's from Luke chapter 19, and it's from 28 to 44.
After Jesus had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. As he approached Bethphage and Bethany at the hill called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' tell him, 'The Lord needs it.'" Those who were sent ahead went and found it just as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked him, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "The Lord needs it." They brought it to Jesus, threw their cloaks on the colt, and put Jesus on it. As he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. When he came near the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." "I tell you," he replied, "if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, "If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you." This is the word of the Lord. Praise be to God.
Thanks, Trevor. And I don't know if you noticed, but that passage begins with some very strange or interesting words. We're told after Jesus had been talking to people, after he said this, he went on ahead up to Jerusalem. It's almost as if he's in a real hurry to get there. And what makes that surprising is he knows he's going into danger. He knows there are people plotting to kill him, and yet he's eager to get there. And to me, Palm Sunday is Jesus' last chance to make a statement about who he is and why he is coming and what he is offering. It's his sort of last chance before the other things happen. He's trying to win over as many people as possible. So he does something very, very clear. He gets his disciples to go and fetch him a colt, the foal of a donkey. I don't think this is a spur-of-the-moment thing. I think this is something he had thought about long and hard and prayed and even prepared for, because he gives them words to say if anybody ever asks them. If someone says, "Why are you untying that colt?" they're to say, "The Lord needs it." And a curious phrase, which to me strikes me as a bit like a code. Like he's got this prearranged signal with the people who are going to give him the donkey. So, and that's exactly what happens. Why are you untying this? The Lord needs, yes. Yeah, take it. Take the donkey. Why a donkey? Well, we all know a donkey is a symbol of peace. Soldiers do not ride donkeys. Priests ride donkeys, merchants ride donkeys, travelers ride donkeys. Soldiers do not ride donkeys. Jesus was coming deliberately on a foal to offer the city of Jerusalem peace. He's coming in fulfillment of a prophecy. Listen to these words from Zechariah chapter 9. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim, and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. Jesus was coming to fulfill a prophecy about the coming of peace. Remember what he was going to be called? He was going to be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. He is coming into Jerusalem as the Prince of Peace. And all of this raises, I think, a big question for us today, especially given what's happening in places like Ukraine and Yemen and Syria and, Myanmar, the list goes on. What sort of peace is Jesus talking about? What is he offering? And I'm saying this because I know we're all desperately praying for the war in Ukraine to stop. That's what we want to happen, Lord. We want it to stop. We want there to be no more missiles and no more bombs and no more mines and no more atrocities and no more destruction. We just want it all to stop. We want peace. But peace is more than just everything stopping. That's a sort of negative side of peace. There's a positive side of peace as well. And so Jesus is bringing peace, which is this, but is much, much more than this. He's bringing what's captured in the Hebrew word shalom. Shalom means peace, but it means not just in the absence of war. It means something much, much more than that. It means the peace of being right with God, the peace of being right with each other, the peace of being right with the whole of creation. The peace from which all other forms of peace can flow. That's what Jesus is bringing, a complete peace. His kingdom is the kingdom of peace. He is the Prince of Peace. His kingdom is the place where it is possible to live life in all its fullness. His kingdom is the place where there is healing, there is forgiveness, there is wholeness. His kingdom is the community where people live by values of trust and love and self-sacrifice. This is the kingdom Jesus is bringing into Jerusalem. And if you think about his ministry, that kingdom, that community, has actually been growing around him throughout all his years of ministry in Palestine. He'd been gathering people, and wherever he went, people experienced this kingdom of peace. And so now he's bringing it to Jerusalem, and to signify it, he deliberately chooses to come in fulfillment of this prophecy, riding the foal of a donkey. That's what's happening here. So how do people respond? Well, there's the response of his disciples. And by disciples, Luke means more than just the 12 apostles. By disciples, he means all the people who are following him. This is Passover time in Jerusalem. Okay, so there's people streaming to Jerusalem from every point on the compass. Okay? A few years ago, I went with my son and his girlfriend through to Glasgow to watch a certain cup final. And the closer we got to Celtic Park, the more the crowds. wearing the blue of St Johnstone and the orange of Dundee United. And I'm not saying which team I supported, but we won. We won. But Jerusalem's a bit like that, multiplied by 10. The people streaming in from all sides. And a great host of them are coming down from Galilee. So these are the people who are marching up this road with Jesus to Jerusalem to the Passover festival. And many of them would have already experienced Jesus' kingdom of peace. When they're in Galilee, they would have experienced. They'd have listened to his teachings firsthand. They'd have been among the crowds, trying to hear what he's saying. They've witnessed the miracles he performed. They'd have been there amongst the 5,000 being fed by him. They'd have heard about the stilling of the storm. They know there's something special in this person. They know something special is going on. And they're flooding up to Jerusalem with Jesus. And they are full of enthusiasm and excitement and joy. And they cry out. They all know the Psalms. They know them off by heart, so they choose the words of Psalm 118. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven, glory in the highest. So that's one response. But there are others among them who weren't so keen. The Pharisees also were coming down from Galilee, because the Pharisees was a way of understanding religion scattered throughout the Jewish world at the time. And we know from the accounts of the Gospels there were Pharisees in Galilee. So the Pharisees among them, they weren't so keen. They too had witnessed with their eyes the kingdom of peace that Jesus was talking about. They'd done that when they were in Galilee. They'd heard Jesus' teachings about the God of grace and truth. They'd seen his miracles. But their response was a different one. Maybe they were jealous. Maybe they were disturbed. Maybe they felt threatened. Maybe they were worried about what the Romans would do. Maybe they simply just did not like the idea of a God of grace and mercy who offered peace to both the righteous and sinners, which is what Jesus did. Whatever their reasoning, whatever their motives, their response is one of disapproval. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." This is a shameful thing they're doing. It's heresy. It's just not done. And you wonder what they expected Jesus to do. "Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Listen, you lot, just be quiet, please. Please. That's very naughty." I don't know. But certainly the response they got was the complete opposite. Jesus challenges them directly. His words are so powerful. "I tell you," he replied, "if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." Because what they're saying is true. And then comes the last big contrast that I see. From the joyful fulfillment of this ancient prophecy in Zechariah to a prophecy that Jesus makes. A prophecy of warning to the people of Jerusalem. Now, the people of Jerusalem are not the pilgrims coming with him, okay? The people of Jerusalem here are the people watching from the city walls, watching this crowd coming towards them. That's who Jesus is talking to here. They're the politicians and the priests and the merchants and the rulers and the lawyers and the administrators. They're the ones who lived good lives at the center of power and who made a fair amount of profit out of the temple, which was a very successful business when you think of all the thousands of people streaming towards it. These were the ones Jesus is addressing, because they are the ones who had so much to lose by what he is bringing. Look at what he says. He says, "If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace. But now it's hidden from your eyes." There's a real irony in these words, because of course the name Jerusalem means city of peace. There's a word play here. If you, people of Jerusalem, had known the peace that was coming, So Jesus warns them what would happen if they reject it. And that's the important thing to know about prophecy, particularly when it comes to prophecy that are warnings, that they are conditional. That's why he's saying these words. People have a choice. He's not saying, this is going to happen, whatever you do, this is going to happen. He's saying, listen to me. If you don't listen, if you don't respond, this is what's going to happen. You have a choice still. But we know from what happened in the week that followed that the leaders of Jerusalem would reject Jesus. They would reject the kingdom of peace he was bringing. That's not what they wanted. And they would scheme together, and they'd tell lies, and they'd spread falsehoods, and they'd incite the mob, and they'd cry out for Jesus' death on a cross. And we know too that within 40 years, everything Jesus said would happen came true. That the Jewish nation rebelled against the Romans, and they tried to set up an earthly kingdom of their own. One not based on the kind of peace Jesus was bringing. And as a result, the Romans turned on them and crushed them, and Jerusalem was besieged, and its walls were torn down, and the temple was destroyed, and there was lots of violence and death. Jesus is trying to warn them. So I say, this is going to happen. You've got a choice. So what have we learned today? Lindsay and I are part of a book group that started when Rick Van Dyke said we should read this book called Sapiens. It was a few years back, because it's quite a troubling book. It's written by a secular atheist. And so a bunch of us meet and we read controversial books. We don't do it too often. It's not all that much fun, I have to say. But it's good for us to just exercise our minds, what's all this about? And the last one we read was called The Road to Wigan Pier. I don't know, hands up if you read The Road to Wigan Pier. Oh, well done, Neil. Yeah, I wouldn't describe it as a good day out. Okay, it's quite gloomy. But in the middle of just talking about it all, we came round to the idea of fake news. And in fact, we see it at the moment with the war in Ukraine, where one side is telling the people to believe one thing and the other side is broadcasting a completely different picture. And we're saying, where's the truth here? And we've also seen it in the past. We see it usually, I can think of an election that took place in a country not too far from here where there's a lot of fake news going around at the time. And there's a completely divided country just now with one group of people believing one thing and one group of people believing something else. Well, what we learned from Palm Sunday and the weeks that followed is that fake news is not a modern invention. It's been around for quite a while. There's always been fake news, especially when it suits the agenda of powerful people who want to manipulate public opinion. But while this has always been the case, the important thing for us to know is that we still have a choice in what we believe. Leon Morris, in his commentary on Luke's Gospel, draws a line between what he calls innocent ignorance and culpable ignorance. You can probably work out the difference yourself. Innocent ignorance is when a person doesn't know too much about what's going on. Culpable ignorance is when a person does have most, if not all, of the evidence and still chooses to believe what is the most convenient thing to believe, or maybe what everybody else is believing. So it ensures a quiet life. It's easy for us to say that the people of Russia are being culpably ignorant at the moment when it comes to the truth about what's going on in the Ukraine, but we have to ask ourselves, if we were there, would we be any different? That's the key question. And what about the truth about things like climate change and world poverty, which is a reality, and all these things where we choose which truth we want to believe in. I think there's always the temptation for us to believe the most convenient thing. At least it's convenient for us. That's always the temptation. It's human nature, if you like, but that doesn't mean it's what Jesus would want us to do. Does God care about truth? Well, of course God cares about truth. Does God care about what's happening in the Ukraine? Of course God cares about what's happening in the Ukraine. Which means the people responsible for all that terrible suffering will have to answer to God for it in the end. They will. They will not escape justice. There was an interesting typo. We publish a sort of weekly reflection on our website, so it was my turn this morning to publish a reflection on the church website, and there's an interesting typo that sneaked in. Instead of "will God forgive Vladimir Putin," it came out as "God will forgive Vladimir Putin." There's a world of a difference between those two. Whether or not God forgives Vladimir Putin is between Vladimir Putin and God. But he will have to meet his maker in the end, whatever happens. Our job in the face of all of this is to make sure that what we're doing and what we're saying is making things better and not worse. And what Jesus is offering on that first Palm Sunday, he is still offering today. And it's just as relevant today, if not more, than it was then. Come and join me, he's saying. Be part of this kingdom of peace. Be part of this community united by my Spirit, founded on the values of grace and truth. A community where there is genuine daily forgiveness and trust, and above all, self-sacrifice, where we try to put the needs of others before our own, where we are energized by the joy of knowing that God is with us to strengthen us and guide us, and that his love for us will never end. Might be good just to take a few moments now just to ask that question of ourselves. Which of these kingdoms would we like to be part of? The one Jesus is offering or the one the world is offering? Let's do that right now. Come now, O Prince of Peace, make us one body. Come now, O Prince of Peace, reconcile your people. We ask this for Jesus' sake and for ours. Amen.